All right. So I am again Madison. I am the volunteer coordinator with Cash Campaign, and I am going to be sharing some exciting updates that particularly concern the Baltimore area. But I think even if you're not in Baltimore, it might still be interesting to learn about what your partners are doing here in Baltimore as well. And I'm also going to be sharing some hopefully helpful tips and tricks for volunteer management, no matter where you might be working. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute at any time, or Lucy and Megan, if they're in the chat, can read them out to me since I am just going to kind of start going through these. So on today's agenda, and I'm just going to be honest, I believe we have 60 minutes, a whole hour set aside for me. I do not think you're going to be getting that much of me today unless there are a lot of questions. So we might be finishing a little bit early, just putting that out there. But we are going to be talking about basically the who's who at a tax site, which I'm sure you are all aware, but it's always good to review. Some exciting software updates, which I was mentioning earlier, just general site logistics, running the volunteer site, recruitment ideas for getting volunteers in the door and working at your site, and volunteer management. So basically, we're going to be talking about the stuff you won't be able to find in your 4012, or maybe, if you read between the lines a little bit. So we're going to start with who is who at a tax site. I apologize. This is probably going to seem super redundant for everyone, but I think it can be a good refresher. So obviously we have, in addition to our site managers, you guys, who we'll talk about in a minute more, but we have our volunteer tax preparers. So volunteer tax preparers are either certified basic or certified at an advanced level. They require different trainings. And I want to be clear, this is something that I see happen year after year. So people who are getting certified advanced actually do not need to take the certified basic exam. They can if they want because it's pretty good practice, but it's not required. So just make sure that if you're doing your own volunteer recruitment, if you're trying to get more people to come on the advanced side, all they need to do is take the advanced tax preparation exam. If they are new, they definitely should take the basic classes that are offered as well, but they do not need to take the basic tax exam unless they really want to. Then we also have, in addition to our tax preparers, our site support volunteers, is what we're calling them. So community resource navigators are essentially can be kind of like a little bit of a tricky role sometimes, but I think that we're working harder to make this role a lot more solid than it's been in previous years. But these are the people who are not actually preparing any tax returns, but instead they're assisting with intake, greeting clients, but they are not greeters necessarily, because they're also the people who are willing to chat up with clients, people that are coming in and out of the site, and seeing what resources that they might be potentially eligible for. And this does require attending a training that we have set up. I'll be sharing the dates of that towards the end of this presentation, but there are two training sessions for that are scheduled in January. They are virtual. They are both 2 hours long, and it's the same content, so people can choose either one. And there is two exams that are required from the IRS, the standards of conduct, which is just sort of like your basic ethics questions, and then intake interview. And again, this role is going to be connected to our financial capability, which we've talked about, and it's just ways that we can connect our taxpayers with resources that they might be eligible for. All of that information comes back to Cash, and then we do lots of follow-up in connecting them with whoever they may need to be connected with in order to get help with anything related to finances and even just well-being kind of as a whole outside of tax time. Greeters have a lot of the same responsibilities as community resource navigators, but are not necessarily responsible for all of the financial capability stuff. Please be aware that everyone who's working at your site, even if they are literally just sitting at a desk, waving to people and showing them where to sign in, they have to have a signed volunteer agreement, and they have to pass the standards of codes of conduct, the standards of conduct from the IRS. And so it is that 10-question quiz. It's the first one on Lincoln Learn that you have to take. That is just an IRS requirement, and all of those volunteer agreements need to come back to me because I work with our IRS liaison to make sure that we have all of that stuff squared away. So Creators, at least for cash, we don't typically advertise this role a lot. It's kind of something that we see just sort of naturally fit in. Greeting is a really great role for any volunteers who are younger than age 18. You have to be at least 18 to be a tax preparer. So if you know any young people that might be looking for volunteer hours, this is a really good option for them. They can also work on kind of getting folders together for clients that have all of the tax intake documents, but the greeters are not assisting with intake. They are literally just welcoming people in, showing them kind of where to go, and are sort of like the front-facing aspect of your site. Every site, obviously, as you guys know, has kind of a different flow to it, which is great. In a different way, I know there are some sites where site managers like to do the greeting and intake and all of that good stuff. So this is just sort of an overview of everything you might see at any tax site, but it doesn't necessarily have to look exactly like this. Moving on to interns and fellows. So interns are usually college students, and they are participating in VITA for college credit. So interns, I kind of like to say we want to make sure that they're differentiated from just your regular volunteers. Not that there's anything wrong with a regular volunteer, we love them. But interns, they're doing this for experience. They're doing this, usually they are accounting majors or finance majors of some kind. So if you guys have any interns at your sites, really try and see them as sort of like your right-hand man, almost like an assistant site manager in that way. We are working hard to make sure that all of our interns get advanced certified, so they'll be able to handle any tax returns that come through. These are the people who, are really going to be having repeated days where they are coming in. So they might be committed to a schedule like every Wednesday, 8 hours, whatever. You're going to make sure you touch base with them about that. But in Baltimore specifically, I know that we're going to be getting quite a few interns, college interns coming in from Towson and from other universities. So it's a really great way to connect with students in the community and kind of encourage new volunteers, because interns, you never know, they could be next site managers in the future. And so it's a great opportunity from that end. Kind of on the same line as that, we have our fellows. So fellows are similar to interns, but it is a paid program that Sadiq and Megan run and do a great job with. And this is a lot longer of a program, right? So interns are only with us for the semester, which happily tends to coincide with tax season, but fellows are there with us for the entire year, and they have kind of stricter assignments to where they work at usually more rural sites where we might find it harder to recruit interns and volunteers. So I know quite a few of you have had fellows in the past, which is awesome. And we kind of place them between site managers and interns because they are paid for their time. And then just to reiterate, every single person at your tax site must have an IRS certification in some way. They must have that 13615. I don't think I have this on the slide, but they must have shown a valid ID of some format, and they have to sign in. This ID doesn't need to be like scanned and shown to me, but if you are the site manager, especially if you're outside of Baltimore, you just have to like visually see it. That is an IRS requirement. And then they have to sign in. So however you want to keep track of your sign-ins, good old pen and paper honestly never fails us, or it's something that I think just makes sense for a lot of sites because it can be a routine. You come in, you write down your name, you write down the time you clock in, clock out, and all of that has to come back to me again for the IRS. So again, this just sort of summarizes all the different people that we'll have at a site. We have our site managers. We have people like me and Lucy, Megan, the lovely cash team who are here to support you and help out however we can. Interns and fellows, basic tax, advanced tax, community navigators, and graders. So anyone who is at your tax site who is not a client should fall somewhere under these categories. All right, now let's get into those thrilling new updates. First, we're going to talk about food. Again, this particularly pertains to cash sites, but if you are outside of Baltimore, just in general, something to think about too. We all know that food is a huge motivator. And so we just kind of want to keep in mind that you're designating storage and break areas for volunteers, site managers designating maybe break times or at least communicating that. For cache sites, we are trying to do this year like an assortment of snacks and refreshments, but in past years we have had issues where people haven't been like eating like a lot of the food that's been sent, and it's just been kind of crazy with communication. And so we just want to make sure everyone is getting the food that they want to be eating, and that's kind of like a nice thing about working at a tax site on a Saturday at Cache is you do get lunch. So that will still be happening, but we might be doing like smaller, kind of easier, like grab and go things. And if you are, again, in Baltimore, if there's something that you guys particularly want, please communicate that to me for Saturdays, and I can make sure we have room in the budget for that. And again, if you are outside of Baltimore, just making sure that you have budget dedicated to food, because we all know, as I said, huge motivator, and is a great way to keep people going. So some more new stuff for this year. Dynamics. So Dynamics is this system that me and Rob and Lucy have been working on with Insight Automation, which is a tech kind of automation team, like the name suggests. And we are working with Dynamics is a Microsoft program, and essentially it's combining DaySmart and Volgistics together. So this is pertaining mostly to Baltimore area sites, obviously our 4 cache sites, and then a few of our other Baltimore sites, such as Center for Urban Families, UMBC, CASA. These guys are all going to be kind of under the Dynamics umbrella. If you are not in Baltimore, I believe that we are going to like kind of have it be like a pilot test this year, and then we'll regroup over the summer and see how we can better implement this for outside of Baltimore. But if you are not in Baltimore, you can kind of disregard what I'm about to say regarding Dynamics, and just stay tuned, because while we do have a recorded training that is specifically for Dynamics and how to use it as a site manager, we are also planning to schedule a live like this, like a training with the automation team, because they know the ins and outs of it, and can show you guys exactly what you need to know. Next up, we have scheduling volunteer open houses. So this is something that is for, again, Baltimore area sites. I am really trying to encourage this. I think one of the biggest things that I hear from volunteers every year, especially new volunteers when they go through the program, is it's so hard to actually recreate what a day-to-day is like at a tax site. And I think that's usually the biggest thing. And we all know as site managers that that's just sort of part of the process, is when you get your new volunteers in, they're going to be shadowing, you're going to shadow them for the first couple of returns. And then, you know, over time, they develop more confidence and are hopefully able to go on to be quality reviewers and are all great volunteers. But one way that I think we can bridge this a little bit is by offering volunteer open houses. So what this is, I almost think of it as like a back to school night, if you guys remember those, or have students in your lives who are currently doing those, are basically, I say nights because if volunteers are working during the day, but it can be on a weekend as well. What I'm asking is if you can get in touch with your partner site and see if you can schedule a day kind of in the very beginning of tax season, but maybe a day when you're not actually doing taxes, but the tax site is set up, and you can just a couple hours set aside and meet with volunteers, walk them through the site, show them just things as small as like where to put their coat, where they'll be sitting, just kind of walk through the process. They're not actually going to be doing any tax returns, but just so that they get a feel for it, so that when they step in on that first day and it's all super busy and we're going through a bunch of tax returns, they will at least kind of know how to get themselves started. Because I have heard some feedback from you guys before is that sometimes getting new volunteers started can always be just a little bit of a hurdle, and it's part of the deal. But hopefully this is something that will make it a little bit easier. And so I think we have a couple sites that have already submitted their hours, which is great. And I'm going to be communicating with site managers to make sure that, or with volunteers to make sure that they're aware of those and that that's a resource for them. So it's not just 2 hours wasted on your end. We definitely want to make sure it's beneficial time for everyone. But if you have any questions about this, feel free to put them in the chat or let me know at the end of my presentation. I'm definitely open to discussing this. All right, and then we have dynamics. So because I am online, I think I'll go through the presentation and then maybe I'll go through and share my screen a little bit so we can kind of click around in there and you can see what it looks like. But I do just want to go through the things that I have already. I do want to share that this was something that happened when I did the in-person training. You are not expected to follow along by any means with this right now. It's just kind of like an overview just so that you know what to expect, and you'll obviously have access to these slides later so that you can follow along at your own pace. But just to kind of get started, so this is again going to be the software that is replacing DaySmart and Volgistics, and it will kind of have everything in one place. There is a link that will be shared with you where you will access the portal and you'll be prompted to log in. It's going to look like a Microsoft kind of login. With this, you will have an email address and a password pre-assigned to your site. So for example, it would be like Enoch Pratt Library at cashmd.org and a random password, which you can reset. You will have one login per site. Different users can use this, but that just kind of makes it easier. It's just one login, one password to remember to view the site. So you can kind of work it out with your site managers at your own site on who you want to be overseeing this. But essentially, after you log in the first time, this is what the dashboard home is going to look like. So basically, you have at a glance these menu items down at the bottom of the screen here. So you can view appointments for the day. You can view your volunteers that are scheduled for the day. And again, just kind of bringing like the bridge between DaySmart and Volgistics, so everything is in one place. You can add your own additional volunteer shifts. You can add additional client availability if you have a walk-in or registering a client on the spot, things like that. Want to make clear that the goal with this is that Rob will have all of the client scheduling stuff set up by the time you guys need to be using this during tax season, and I will have all of the volunteer stuff set up so that you shouldn't have to, set up your own volunteer hours or your own client availability hours. That will be pre-programmed, but this is just so that you know how it is. If there's like a closure or something, you can delete stuff on your own and don't always have to go through us. But obviously, we're here to support with as much of this as we possibly can. So I already went over this with our Baltimore folks, but right now the sites that definitely are going to be using this is Community Engagement Center, Enoch Pratt, Randallstown, the YMCA in Waverly, and then we are working currently to get login information for Center for Urban Families, Morgan State, Loyola, UMBC, CASA, DHS. Also, we have a couple extra accounts. For example, University of Baltimore, like one of our pop-up sites where we won't be doing things as frequently, but we'll still be offering client appointments. They will have access to this too. So if your ears just perked up, if you heard any of your sites being named, please just keep an ear out for an email from me as we are getting this login information to you. We'll get it to you as soon as it's available. So again, just going back through the actual platform, this is where you can view the volunteer shifts that people are signed up for. So for example, Laura Gretz, she works for Insight. So this is just sort of like a fake account. Imagine that she's a volunteer. I know this looks kind of different, but it just takes some adjusting and then it'll make a lot more sense. But you can see that this is, oh, and by the way, this will be narrowed down by your own tax site. So you won't be able to see other tax sites. So this screenshot shows back taxes in addition to the Randallstown library. For example, you would only be able to see Randallstown if you were the site manager at Randallstown. So we can see that Laura signed up to volunteer at the Randallstown library on January 29th from 10 to 6. And so this will kind of be like you're at a glance seeing who signed up. Viewing client appointments. So you'll just navigate to the left-hand side here, and it's a little puzzle piece. Client appointments. This way you can see all of the registrations, and 211 will have their own login for this as well. So they will be the ones that are plugging in people for the tax appointments once that line opens in mid-January. Next up, I want to show you how we can create and manage client available appointments. There's a way you can do that when you go to appointments, which is right above the client appointment page we were just on. You just press that new plus button at the very top of the screen there, and then that way you can enter in the site, the address of your location, the start and end time of the appointment, and that way you can open up if you find that you have more availability. Always make sure you hit save and close too. That's kind of the key to making sure we save all this information. If you want to create available client appointments in bulk, just so you don't have to go through and do the same thing a million times, what you can do is select bulk add appointments from underneath client appointments, kind of working our way up that navigation bar there. And you'll just select your tax site and put in the respective start and end dates. So for example, if you know you're going to have room for 3 volunteer appointments every Monday or every Monday or Tuesday through Thursday, let's say from 10 to 4, then you can enter all of that in there, and then that they will automatically plug that in, and then you can hit submit, and that will be auto-populated for 211 and for people to sign up when they are calling 211 and the 211 people are registering them online and when people register themselves online. Viewing daily appointments. So you are going to want to go to client appointments, same place we were on the side, and then select today's appointments from that drop down at the top. Again, I apologize. I know this system doesn't seem super intuitive. We have been working so hard to try and make it more intuitive than it was, but definitely one of the biggest challenges with this is kind of getting VITA tax-minded people to think the way we do. So all this is to say, if you guys have any suggestions, input, feedback, please send them to me. No offense will be taken at all. This is for you guys, and it's to optimize your time and volunteers' time and clients' time. So please share those with me, and I will be sure to pass that along to our automation team that we're working with. We are really trying our best here, so all of your patience is really appreciated. So again, going in, say you have a walk-in and you just want to register a client quickly, you are going to go to the appointments calendar under the client appointments group here on the side. That's the left-hand side. And then you'll get this little calendar that will pop up from there. Any date that has a dot underneath it has open appointments. So one question I got about this before is if there's a dot underneath, will it have old appointments that aren't available anymore that have been closed? The answer is no. The dot will only appear when there are open appointments that can be scheduled still. So you can just click that and you can view whatever appointments may be available for them. Click on that. Then you will find the time that works, and then from there you'll be able to enter in their taxpayer information. You can search from a drop-down if they already exist in the 211 sphere. Their name will already come up, but if not, you can create a new account for them, and it's just, they're not account, just a new registration for them, I guess. First and last name, email address, phone number, just that classic kind of contact stuff. And then the notes might be helpful too if it's something where they needed to cancel or reschedule an appointment. That's a new feature we're kind of excited about with this as well. And then you just hit that green register button to finish making the client registration. And then just finalizing again, if you haven't already, please send your available hours where clients can schedule tax appointments to Lucy and Rob. Just look out for your site name there. If your site is any of those, if you haven't already gotten those hours to them, please do that. And then we are going to work to get that in there so it'll be nice and smooth by the time we come back after the holidays and get into tax season. So we have resources. We have a CRM, which is like a guide that goes through every step of the way, kind of like what I just did in the presentation, but this is a lot more thorough and has different scenarios, almost like a user guide that is available that you will get after this call. You will also have access to a 30-minute or 20 to 30 minute, I forget exactly how long it is, training presentation from the developers who made it. So they will walk you through it. So you can pause, rewind, fast forward to your heart's content. And then also, obviously, Lucy is recording this right now, so you can rewatch this if you so choose. There are resources that are available. And as I said earlier, we are going to work on scheduling a meeting with site managers and the Insight team to happen virtually in real time, where you can answer any questions and we can go through it all together at the same time as well. That'll probably happen in early January, so just stay tuned. Let's try it. Let's maybe come back to this at the end because I want to make sure that we go through all of our other volunteer management stuff before we wrap that up. So let's get into recruitment next. So shifting gears a little bit from the nitty-gritty of software stuff and into what I kind of think is more fun, which is actually talking to people and getting more volunteers to work at your tax sites. So recruiting volunteers, this is all so common knowledge, but I'm just going to say it. This is the time now, if you have not already been doing it, even though it is crazy and the holidays are about to be upon us, people are thinking about New Year's resolutions. So I think this is a really good time to just drop it in at all those holiday gatherings you may be going to. Putting up flyers. I will share in the next couple slides a few cash-generated recruitment flyers that we'll share with you after this call that you can distribute at your own site as well. If you are kind of outside of cash but still want materials or any kind of like things you can post, just let me know. We have all that you guys can use. Just to summarize, who can be a tax volunteer? It can be anyone who is in the US legally, so they have to have a valid ID. And so for example, we see a lot of students who are college students who might be from international areas, countries, that's great. Just make sure that they have like a education visa and they are good to go, and they have to be over the age of 18. So again, just think about getting your friends and family involved. We all know tax season can take a lot of time from us. And so what better way to stay connected with friends, family, maybe colleagues, than by getting them involved and making them a part of this thing that we all do together. And just to emphasize again, too, we all know this, you do not have to be a tax expert or a tax professional. Oh, yes, go ahead, Lucy.
I just wanted to add in, for folks who are outside of Baltimore, the age of 18 rule is something for us at Cash. Technically, folks can be a VITA site at younger age. There are a lot of programs, it turns out, around the country that high schoolers kind of run the show. And I know some of our partners use them as well. So if you are working with high school age volunteers, that's totally okay. Liv had a 16-year-old volunteer. We always have taxpayers who are like, oh, this person is too young. Have that 16-year-old prove them wrong. But it is allowed to have folks under 18. Obviously, they just have to pass the certification tests. But for our cash registered volunteers, so that's anybody in the Baltimore area, we do require them to be 18.
Thanks, Lucy. Thank you for clarifying that. And again, just to reiterate too, in the Baltimore area, you can be under the age of 18 as long as you are not doing taxes. So you can be a greeter. But again, if you're outside of Baltimore, just refer to your own kind of organization and rules from that end on that. I was just saying that you do not have to be a tax professional to be a volunteer. Anyone can do it as long as they go through training and as long as they get their certification. So here are just a couple fun flyers that I made. I like the tear-off flyers. I know me and Megan have been distributing them around Baltimore at different like community boards, and it's really fun to see all the little tear-offs like slowly dissipate over time. It's exciting to know that people are interested in doing it. So just let me know if you want something like this or these in particular, and I can share them with you, especially for like college partners. These are great to share at colleges, anywhere where people are that might want to be involved. So just pausing in a lot of my recruitment efforts, this is something I've been sharing a lot because we all know with tax volunteering, it's not necessarily going to be like, just your easy Saturday 2 hours playing with dogs at the SPCA, sadly. Like this is something that involves a little bit more time and effort, commitment, but I think is really, really rewarding. And so I think to share this and kind of summarize everything, I made this graphic. You're first signing up on the Cash website, then volunteers have to attend training in January. They can do that in person. Cash has our training at Towson University in January, but there are also trainings with our partner sites at UMBC, at Loyola. So there are lots of options if you're in the Baltimore area. Obviously, some of you guys that are outside of Baltimore have your own trainings too, which is great. It's just a matter of getting connected and finding those. The certification, step 3, is a huge part of it. Just taking those required IRS exams on the Lincoln Learn, and obviously this goes for site managers too. It is required for everyone at a tax site. Submitting your volunteer agreement to me as a PDF so I can have that on file for the IRS, and then to start actually signing up for volunteer shifts. So no matter where those might take place, signing up. However, if you are using Dynamics, you'll do it through us and through the sign up process that we have. And if you are outside, you'll do it through whatever system you guys have to have volunteers sign up for shifts. So I just want to go over our volunteer training schedule really quick. This is the one that we have at Towson, and then we have a few things available online. So this is for basic certification people. So as you can see, most of our trainings are on Wednesday evenings and Saturdays during the day. I want to reiterate that volunteers don't need to take, for example, you see there's basic 1 on Wednesday the 8th and basic 2 on Saturday the 11th. You don't have to take those back to back necessarily. Say that you're only available to do basic 1 on the 8th, and then you might not be available to take basic 2 until the 25th. That's fine as long as you take them in succession. It has to be basic 1 and then basic 2. So the latest that people can possibly take basic training for Cash for at Towson is basic 1 on the 22nd and basic 2 on the 25th. We also offer returning basic. So returning basic is the same contents of basic 1 and basic 2, but it is smashed together and taught at a bit of a faster pace. And so this is kind of encouraged for volunteers who may be, coming back. And oh yes, Jeff, go ahead, raise, what's going on? Oh, Jeff, did you have a question? It's okay, we can come back. If you think of it, just feel free to unmute. Yes, returning is online. Anyone can take these online sessions too. So if you have anyone in your scope who might only be available for virtual, I neglected to add there is another virtual training session on Sunday, the 26th for basic returners. That one is in the afternoon. It is from 1 to 4. So I'm not expecting you to remember that. I will have the updated version of that in the slides that I will send out to you. But that's a great way. I know we're getting a lot of new volunteers who can't make it up to Towson for training, but want to do it online, are taking the returning in place of doing basic 1 and basic 2.
I'm here.
Oh, hi.
No, real quick, what's the breakdown of what you include in basic 1 versus basic 2? How do you?
I can pull up our training schedule to have that. I don't know if Lucy has that.
I can speak to it.
Our director of.
Here I am. So in basic 1, we will cover an overview of the 1040, right? So it's an expanding upon the basic law webinar that we have that is now shorter and better. And then we do an introduction to TaxSlayer where we walk through a basic scenario together. That pretty much takes up all the time of basic 1. And then once they head into basic 2, we will cover the remaining topics. So that's usually going to be basic retirement, taxable state refunds, education credits, child and dependent credit. We'll do some Maryland training and tax time fin caps, as well as more scenarios.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Lucy. So that kind of covers our basic schedule. Moving on to advanced. So something that we're changing about training this year is that we are offering the sessions at the same time, just taught in different rooms. So hopefully we can accommodate more people. So same thing, advanced 1. Oh no, why does this all say advanced one? Okay, advanced two is on Saturdays. I'm sorry about that. But you kind of get the idea. It's more or less the same thing as basic. And again, just to cover, if people do basic and they decide that they want to become an advanced volunteer, um, they can, if they have enough time, they can take the session. Another thing I want to keep it like let people know too is that while we encourage people to come to training as much as possible, and I do think it's very helpful for learning, if it is not possible for your volunteers to attend the training sessions they need, whether it's in person or online, I think that it is possible to still get the certification if they are dedicated and if they do all of their self-learning through the resources that we have available on our volunteer resource page that you guys know about. If they watch the YouTube video that Sonia put together and go through like the Link and Learn practice. Again, it's not as easy as just being able to straight up ask questions as we can in a training, but it's still an option. So the thing that is required for people to work at a site is going through the volunteer agreement and having a valid ID. Those are like the non-negotiables. So just want to clear that up for anyone, if that might be a barrier for anyone to get volunteers at their site. A couple helpful links here. So something new I've been doing this year, and again, if you have your own volunteer coordinators at sites wherever you are, I find that doing online virtual information sessions have been really helpful because again, tax volunteering is a little more involved than most volunteer opportunities. And so just being able to sit down for like 20 minutes, half an hour, and just walk through every step of signing up for training, attending training, and then what actually working at a tax site looks like. That has really, I think, been helpful for a lot of people, and it's given me more insights into different types of volunteers that want to get involved. I don't want to overpromise anything, but I will say for some of our outside of Baltimore people in these virtual trainings I've been doing, I have had a few people who are not in Baltimore who are looking for opportunities, and so hopefully they will be getting sent your way. You may have already gotten an email from me introducing you to people who are outside, who are looking for opportunities in your backyard. So that's been exciting, and it's really easy to do. So this is just a QR code where if you want to share that with anyone, you can, and I will sit down and go over all of the beautiful possibilities of becoming a VITA volunteer and participant. And then we just have a volunteer interest form on the right. That's super standard stuff. So that's, if people are not able to get their hands on a flyer or get the link to sign up, this will kind of directly go to that. And then I will be able to follow up with them and give them all the information they need. Moving on. Training registration. So if you know you have people that are ready to do training, and if they are in Baltimore, this is how we do our training registration. We have kind of a new look to our website if you haven't already seen it. So there is the volunteer tab at the top. You click that, then scroll down to sign up for free tax volunteer training, and then register for volunteering on the volunteer portal is what we're calling that green page with the people at the desk. And that is where volunteers will be prompted to fill out a quick form that is just name, last name, address if they want to share that, email address for sure to stay in touch. And then there is a drop down option that's required that asks the volunteer to summarize kind of what volunteer experience they're looking for. So like, for example, the options are, I'm brand new to volunteering, but I'm interested to learn. That will automatically generate an email to them that will have instructions on how to sign up for basic volunteering. If they say they've volunteered a bunch before and they feel very comfortable with VITA, then it will automatically generate an email that has advanced training links and so on and so forth. Same for internships, different things like that. I know this will look very different for people who are at different sites, but I just want to put it out there. That's kind of like part of our newer dynamics thing that we've been working on this year. Okay. So getting started at a volunteer site. So having new volunteers shadow more experienced volunteer makes sense, right? Or a site manager, and then actually having whoever the trainer per se was, whether it's you, a site manager, or one of your more experienced volunteers, sit and just watch the new volunteer do their first return to make sure that they're comfortable with it. One thing I want to put out here, I believe Rob mentioned this to me, is that he said it's been tricky with having shadowing volunteer shadow in the past because, according to Rob, people don't want to always step out of the shadows. They're very comfortable there. It can be kind of like a big step to actually take that step to do that first tax return, but we know that that's what has to be done. So you guys know your sites, like you know your populations, both the people you serve and the people who volunteer with you. So I trust you all to kind of make that call on your own of the best way to indoctrinate and train your volunteers when they're actually on site. But another way of doing that, as we all know, is just being accessible to ask questions. And obviously that open house, which I mentioned earlier in the call, if that's something that you are able to accommodate and letting your volunteers come in and meet you, see the site, just to kind of avoid that clunkiness that can sometimes come with the first day of volunteering. And then just daily site management. I know I don't have to say this, but I'm putting it in here anyway. Greeting volunteers, making sure that every volunteer can get into TaxSlayer, that they have a username and password. I know that that can sometimes be a roadblock when people are new and coming in and getting them all set up. So just making sure you have a plan in place for that. Also creating a structure that kind of makes sense for your site, whether that is with how you do your quality reviews, taking breaks. You guys know what I'm talking about, just kind of like that flow of getting through the day. That's something that I think comes just with experience and with every tax season that goes by. And I said it before about accessibility, but just making sure that your volunteers and people you work with know that you are there if you have any questions. Taxes can be intimidating even after people have gone through training, and just keeping people busy, especially for volunteers. You know, people volunteer because they want their time to go somewhere useful. And so while it can definitely seem stressful if it doesn't seem like there's a lot for especially greeters or community resource navigators to do at your site, we want to make them feel valued and like their time matters. So for example, this year we're going to be having community navigators and greeters doing things like scanning capability forms, stuffing folders, maybe if there are like resource papers that can be printed, just different things like that, just to keep the energy kind of going, and making sure everyone has a job that is keeping them busy while they're there to volunteer. And then obviously investing time in new volunteers. We want quality over quantity. This is what separates us from any other like big tax places. We're not just trying to churn out as many returns as possible. We're trying to address taxpayers and make sure that they are financially, holistically getting their questions answered. But the same thing for volunteers. We want to make sure that they feel like they are valued and appreciated, and that even if we are just going through a busy time and trying to get as many clients met as possible, putting in that extra time in new volunteers, like you never know what that extra like minute of time or recognition might mean to them. And who knows, maybe they could be like an assistant site manager later on, or in the future. So you always just want to treat people that way and investing and valuing their time. Volunteer sign-ins are required. So this is a little bit different if you are not in Baltimore. I'm responsible for the Baltimore area sign-ins, but if you are not in Baltimore, I believe this is how we did it last year. All of those sign-ins just need to come to us by the end of tax season. Lucy, is that correct? Like you don't have to get those to me monthly. It's more so just the end of season when we do our data.
Yeah, we don't actually even need your sign-in sheets. We just need your totals for
Perfect.
training and for like tax site volunteering. So it's just two numbers.
Yep. So it's definitely still encouraged that you have some kind of sign-in sheet or way that you do that if you're outside of Baltimore, so that you
It's
can keep track
required
of
by
it.
the IRS. So you do have to have
Yes.
a sign-in sheet.
Yes, yes, yes. You have to have your IRS required sign-in sheet, but your way of keeping track of that on your own, like keeping track of your totals, however that makes sense to you, until we need those two final numbers at the end of tax season. But if you're in Baltimore, The sign-in sheets need to be, well, we will sign it. We will send you the templates for them, like the one you see here. And it's super easy. Just name, date, and the name of the site, the times that the volunteers worked. I want to note that only volunteers are required to sign in and interns. Site managers are not required. It's anyone who is working at a tax site completely for free. I know that can get confusing because we all kind of fall under the VITA umbrella, but this is only required for volunteers. Site managers can still sign in if they want, but it's only required for volunteers. All right, so now we're going to step back and do a little bit of a summary. So volunteers can sign up for Baltimore using Dynamics online portal to sign up for available shifts. Each shift can be given multiple volunteer openings depending on how many clients we're expected to serve. So for example, volunteer shifts like Wednesdays at the CEC from 10 to 4, we need 4 volunteers. So there can be multiple openings. And those openings will update as volunteers sign up for them. So if 3 out of 4 of them are filled, volunteers will be able to see that. For Baltimore area people, please let me know, as I said earlier, as early as possible about your site schedule, the number of volunteer slots that you want, so that I can put those in place and have those ready to go as volunteers are signing up for those openings. And then lastly, if anyone feels called to, you can put it in the chat if you want. What do you guys do to make your volunteers feel appreciated? I think that because we are, we have people from outside of Baltimore on this call as well, it might be nice to kind of put our heads together and share any nice experiences that you've done to make your volunteers feel appreciated.
We do a potluck, like a picnic at one of the local parks. They
That's
always enjoy that.
awesome.
Yeah, they love it.
At the end of tax season?
Yeah, yep.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. Anyone else have anything? I know some of you guys might not work with as many volunteers depending on your site. As you know, for cash, we always try and do similar to what Jeff said, like an end of year party, or end of tax season party. This past year we had it at a brewery, which was really fun. And we did little awards. This year we'll try and have it somewhere similar, maybe like an event space or a restaurant, but just little things like that definitely can make all the difference. I can go back to my presentation now, but I'm pretty sure that is it. Thank you guys so much. I guess I took up more time than I thought, but I'm glad that we kind of got through everything. I know I didn't go through the the software per se in real time, but honestly, that stuff is changing every day. And it will be ready before tax season, but I just don't want to like spend too much time going through stuff with you if it's all going to change. And I know a lot of you aren't even going to be using that site anyway, necessarily. So just let me know. If you have questions, I will be sharing all of those resources with you either today or tomorrow. So just keep an eye on your email for that. But does anyone have any questions in general about volunteer management stuff? All right. Well, if you think of anything